Hey guys, welcome to a brand new video. We're here obviously with the tutorial for the custom livery for my team and even sometimes career mode. Don't be scared off by how long the video is, 25 minute plus or so. It's really in depth about the two different ways of getting these liveries working, but let's get into it. So first things first, you're going to need to download a few things very similar to the helmet video. So you're going to go to the ERP archiver, make sure you download this, that way we can import the new textures. I'm going to click the download now, and once again, if you can afford to donate to Petar, then please do. It's more than worth it. If you can't, then that's not a problem. Just click no and take me to the downloads. I'm going to scroll all the way down to the bottom and download 9.0. Once you download that, it's going to start downloading, and then you're going to want to chuck that in your desktop. Now, just to preface this, there may be some framework you may need to install if you haven't before. Once you've done that, that'll be absolutely fine. The next thing you're going to need is the Intel plugin for Photoshop. Now again, you can obviously do this through other mediums such as GIMP, but I don't have any practice or know-how on how to do that, so obviously this will be a Photoshop specific thing. At the very top here, if you hit download plugin, it'll then come up with all the information you need on how to install it and also how to save the stuff. So at the very top right, if you click download zip and also drag that to your desktop, that way you know where that is. The third thing you will need is Winrar. This is how you can extract all the stuff from the downloads we're doing at the moment. Just download whatever nationality it is for you, and then either the 64 or the 32-bit. And also we've got these files to download, which will be very similar to the helmet ones, where you'll need these for later on, and some SFC files just to kind of get you where you are. Just download them and add them to your desktop. And then finally, we're going to download the template for this. JB has smashed out the park again. As you can see at the time of this, he's already done all of the cars. He'll be adding the supercars shortly. But what you want to download is the 2022 foam car. If you just click on that, it'll open up into Mega, which is obviously where all the files are hosted. And then just click download, and then this will download two different files, which will be the car template as well as the sticker for inside the halo. So first things first, once you've installed Winrar, you'll be able to open these files here. What you want to do is open up Intel and then follow the instructions that are on the website, and you'll be able to install this. And then once you've done that, you can then obviously delete that. Then the next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to take these two out of the file and then whack them straight onto your desktop. That way they're just easy to access and whatnot. I've already got them here, so I won't need to do that right now. Just whack them anywhere, and then that'll be fine. You can then delete that. Same with Ego. You want to open that and then drag that folder into the desktop again. I already have this, so I won't need to do that. So you'll then have your three files. And the next thing you're going to want to do is open up Photoshop, and we can start working on these files. So now you have the car loaded in as well as the inside of the halo sticker. I'm not really going to spend too much time on this. The premise is exactly the same more or less for how you would actually do it. So for now, we're going to completely disregard this, and we're just going to focus on the car. Now there are actually two ways to do these liveries using two different versions. So one version is obviously the car you're looking at now, which is the FOM car. This one doesn't allow any sponsors inside the halo, any sponsors on the car, any logos, which gives you the benefit of being able to put stuff on the car and not having to worry about any issues further down the line. Now the drawback to this is you can't have like an inside halo sticker or anything like that. So it is relatively easier to do this one. The second way you can do it is if you do it on one of the colored changing liveries. So what this means is you can put a paint into one of these, and you can constantly update and change it. So you generally use three different colors for that. Then when you put it in game, you can change any of the colors to match how you want. We'll go for the first one, and then we'll go for the second one after that's all up and running, just to get you a gauge so I don't try and overload you with too much information. So for now, we'll stick with method number one. So on the right hand side, if you have seen the helmet video, it's going to be very similar to that. And in terms of saving stuff and importing stuff, that's really where it's going to mainly change. But some cars can be tricky, so we'll run through this anyway. So obviously, if you open up Paint by double clicking it, it'll come into here. JB has given us a wireframe if you're using a version of Photoshop that doesn't have this feature working, where you can then change the wireframe yourself. It's easy to get a bit lost and if this doesn't work. A few people in the last video said they're having issues with Photoshop. Again, it's better to use the oldest version you possibly can. Just that way it makes life a little bit easier. And then once again, I'm obviously on the paid version of Photoshop, so I have this feature. The easiest way to save this, if you go File and hit Save As, then make sure you save to your cloud document, and then for all intents and purposes call it F122 car. Just in that way you don't lose any progress, which I have lost many hours of progress in my lifetime on making 3D models and editing stuff like that. So again, the premise is exactly the same. So if you're brand new to this, let me walk you through it very briefly. Two ways of doing this. You can obviously do the first way, which is sometimes the most tedious way, but sometimes when you're learning out, it's quite easy to adjust it and stuff like that. So what you can do is start like painting onto the actual wing itself, into any of the parts of the car that you obviously want to mod and stuff like that. So for example, you can see we very much drew hello on the rear wing, and then if you wanted to get a little bit, you know, a bit more creative with some of your designs, you can then even start to add some assets if you really wanted to. And then, like, let's say we add the chevron down the left hand side, and then obviously we can change it to like a hot pink, for example, just to match the paint on top. So as you can see, it works quite well. So with this model specifically, as opposed to the helmet, there's very little warping, if at all any. The only time you may encounter any warping would usually generally be around the sides here, obviously where it moves up and moves down alongside the chassis. So it's quite tricky. I mean, it may take you a little while to figure out what parts of the car go where. So for example, these up here will obviously then congregate to this little gap here, which would be the vents. Certain areas are pretty good in terms of how it's laid out with the UV. One of the main issues that some people may have is that the cockpit area is obviously centered around here. So you've got half of the front area of the car here. It then splits out to the second area down here, which then obviously has the front wing. But in terms of UV scope, I've definitely worked with a lot worse. There's not actually many issues with this one. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a blank canvas by creating a new layer, and we're going to make a white base for us for now. We can get rid of our little doodles so far, and then we're going to load in, and obviously now we currently have a white chassis. So what we're going to do, the second way you can work this, which I obviously showed in the helmet one as well, if you create a new layer in that tab, and then you want to put some words or, you know, some cool stuff along the car, like let's say you wanted to put the F1 2022 logo in the car, just for it being on there, you know, you want to promote the game for whatever reason. So what you do is you drag it into the 3D layer instead, place it where you want, and then because you made that new layer in the paint file, if you right click on the logo and click merge down, it will then go onto the car. So as you can see, it's currently on there, and if you go back, you can see it's on there. It's a little bit warped, like I said, the engine cover can be quite tricky sometimes. So then let's see how far we can push this, right? So very similar to the helmets, there's obviously certain things you have to do if you want to get the most out of this, right? So if we find a texture in here, there's one specifically I'm looking for that everyone uses in their thumbnails. Here it is. So we have this here, right? So this is usually what everyone's been running for their thumbnails at the moment, which is pretty typical. So now, for example, if I was to merge this down, it would come up with an error on screen saying I'm merging it to two different things. So the reason this is because I've got the number, the decals, and the paint files all active. So to circumvent that, if you go to 3D tab, click the cylinder, and then turn off the number and the decal, then this will work. So once again, you want to go in and make sure you've got your new layer. So if you did it on this, it would merge them down, and it would be a bit of a pain in the ass. So create a new layer, right click and merge down, and boom, it's on the car. So like I said earlier with the warping, you can see from there it's gone up slightly. From the side, obviously it's exactly how you want. If you wanted to go into Photoshop, tweak it slightly, absolutely can. There's nothing stopping you from doing that. But for all intents and purposes, even if you wanted the mark, because then I know what some people do, which often is the best way in most cases, is you've now got the blueprint down. Then what you do is you then just go back, go over it with the pen tool, just to make it a little bit better, and then just fill it in. And then when you go back to the model, obviously it'll be exactly the same layout, exactly the same shape, just a bit crisper and a bit sharper, which obviously, depending on how high you run the graphics, it is very noticeable come that May. So that's essentially how you paint a car. Again, obviously certain parts do different areas. If you get to a point where you don't understand, or you want to paint on the halo but you can't find the halo, then it's very easy, as simple as creating a layer and then just drawing like a line on it, something that you'll be able to find, checking back in the paint file, and oh, there we go, the halo's going to be over there. Then you could just select all around the shape of the halo. The UVs are pretty accurate. There's not really many that are too close to the other ones, which then can give you a bit of a pain trying to then work in an area where you try and match that. So here's a good example. Found the halo, I want to make it red, and there we go. We have a red halo. You can see obviously we did select all of that area, and it's not worked for all of the halo. That's just simply because there are other parts of the halo that you would obviously need to put paint on, such as here. You can see that the line's gone down to here as well, so then you then just paint in this area as well. You don't have to be neat with it, unless you're like me, everything has to be tidy with a mask. So that's essentially how you paint on this. I'm going to cut away now. I'm going to show you the design that we're going to put into the game, and you can then follow along with me. So here we are. So here's the livery I have mocked up for the purpose of this video. I'm sure it will be used at some point. Of course, it's the Veloce livery. Given obviously I'm their livery designer, it makes sense for me to be able to knock this out the park. 2 birds with 1 stone. It's quite a simple livery. Black carbon for the most part of the car. Obviously our sponsors, followed by the current Veloce livery guideline. So let me open up the paint so you can have a little look, see what's going on here. In terms of how things look, you can see this layer here. I've got a mask, which obviously then hides and makes things a little bit neater, a little bit easier to paint and stuff like that. But you don't need this. It's just something that it just helps me navigate a little bit easier. So that's quite straightforward. I've got SFCs in here as well. We'll talk about that very shortly, because those aren't that necessary with the second version, but definitely necessary for the first one. So one thing to obviously show you, so obviously before we turn off the decals and the numbers, right? So let's talk about the numbers. You won't need to worry about the decals because those will go on top of the car no matter what. So you don't have to figure out and or worry about that. So if we go back and turn the number on the model, it's not completely visible, which isn't the end of the world. We don't actually need it. Let's open up the number, and you can see I've got my number here. So this is how it won't look similar to this. If anything, it will most likely look like this for you, which will be the base template. So how do numbers work? Numbers are very simple. They're very like decal files from yesteryear games. So what you'd want to do is, on top of this, you'd want to create your number, for example. So if you wanted to do this for every single number, you absolutely can. That's not good. That's not something that people haven't done. It actually happens quite a lot. So then let's say you wanted to do number 5, just for whatever reason. So we'll use a very basic number. Obviously you can be quite intricate with how you do yours. You know, you don't have to do anything in a specific way necessarily, but there are a few things obviously to bear in mind. So there's in the wireframe, there is obviously going to be a little box you can see where you kind of want to fill that out. You can go up, you can go down, obviously bearing in mind where you put your sponsors on your car. Obviously, you know, it can be a quite bit tricky to try and match that out. So what you need to do, once you have your number, make sure you have nothing else but a black background. Also turn off this wireframe, make sure that's turned off. If you've got one up here, then that's absolutely fine, that won't matter, but as long as this one's off, you'll be good to go. So we're going to be working with an alpha channel now, which is pretty simple in concept. So what that means is you've got red, green and blue, also the RGB, which is the main one. You have the red one, green one, blue one. So this is what gives information to the game. You need to show this, don't show this, right? So when you're saving the main image, you want to save the 5 and not the black background. So a black background makes it transparent. So at the moment, if I was to save this, you would have you have 25 with the 5 in the middle of it. So it would look really weird. It'd be black and red. So then what you need to do to change this is on your number, hold control and click on the T, which will then highlight it almost as if you're creating a new layer. If you go down to alpha, once you've got that selected, make sure the 5 is coloured in white. Then up here, if you click the rectangular marquee tool, right click and select inverse. This then gives you obviously the alternative selection. So whatever you selected, everything but that is now selected. Make sure you change it to black, and then you're just going to brush out that. You then have number 5 there. You can check, go back and forth, make sure it's crisp, and then your number's ready to go. So what you need to do is go File, Save As. Now let's create a folder on our computer. Let's call it F122 My Car, just for reference. And inside of here, you want to go to Intel. Providing you've installed it correctly, this will show up. And let's save it as number. You want to select color and alpha, followed by BC3 and sRGB. This is just the correct way to save it. Same goes for decals. If you want to do decals, we don't have to worry about that here, but the general premise is the same for all of them. So that's obviously something to bear in mind if you're doing this kind of stuff. I mean, they're generally grouped up with how they're gone. So once you've done that, we've hit okay. So our number's now good. If we go back to the car, obviously you can turn off your number, turn it back on again. Unfortunately, it's not really going to show up on this. Just how the model is. It's not necessarily the end of the world. You can see it there very briefly if you really wanted to. So now let's go back to the car. So let me tell you how we're going to save this. So obviously you're going to want to hit save, change it back to Intel, and go into my car and save this as paint. So that's all good. So again, the settings will be different for this just because naturally, as you can imagine, it's not the same. So instead, you're going to want to go to color, then BC1 sRGB. That's easiest way to remember it is 3's for color and alpha is for decals and sponsors and stickers. BC1 is usually for paint and for helmets. So that's all good. So we now have our paint file and we also now have our number. The next thing you're going to want to look at is SFCs. Now, for those of my helmet, this is what tells the game this needs to be matte, this needs to be glossy, this needs to be metallic, chrome, etc, etc, etc. So the SFC I have for this one is very simple. So we have glossy, which is red predominantly, and we have green, which is matte. The black background is obviously just a mask. The game will try to read that, but it'll have nowhere to go, so it won't make a difference. The issue being is that sometimes it can be quite tricky on this car. There is an M file, but we will again worry about that later. For all intents and purposes, we're going to use a red SFC base just because it makes life easier. So I'm going to include the red one, obviously different colours such as green is obviously matte, red's glossy, so on and so forth. So I'll include these two files in the download. Again, like I said earlier, we'll be working with M files as well. Once again, that will be included as well. Similar to the helmets, it's just a single colour. In this case, obviously it's red. That's something else we'll need to import. Right, so now we've saved everything, we're ready to start importing, so let's head back to the desktop. So now we have the folder for my team car. We're going to open that and you can see we've got our number, our paint, our SFC, depending on which one you want. We're going to go glossy this time. So now first thing we're going to do is open up the ERP archiver folder and we're going to open this and we can start getting ready. First things first, before you do anything in here, if you're going to go to settings, set game directory. Now this is crucial for later on down the line. You need to put the directory of where your game's saved. Now if you don't know where that is, let me walk you through that. If you open up your Steam, right click on your game, go browse local files. So if you open this up, you can see the folder path of where it's saved. So this is exactly where mine is, so I'm then able to find that through ERP archiver. So now all you need to go is set directory and then go through obviously wherever it's saved. It may be saved in different locations, may be saved in other locations. So I'm now going to show you where we import all of our files. So hit file open, head to 2022 asset groups, followed by 22 vehicle package, teams, then common FOM. Before they used to be inside the FOM car and my team Honda, Ferrari, Mercedes, Renault, but they've changed it. So it's this time it's in here. This is what holds all of the different files for my team, including your numbers, your liveries and all that. So first things first, let's get ahead and install the number. So you want to find the number 5 or whatever number yours is going to be. Hit textures, then import. Find your my car folder and then import the number 5. Hit yes. This is what we saved it for earlier. This stops us having to search for them manually, which can be a bit of a pain. In my case, I've done 25, so I'll then install 25. Now, if we scroll down and go to all of these different liveries, there's some left over from Breaking Point. There's obviously Devon Butler's one. There are plenty of like interesting ones here, and ones that will obviously come to the game later on down the line and whatnot. So for this one, the first way we're going to do this, you want to find the FOM car. So just underneath the F170, you're going to have FOM-C, D, M, and S. So we'll start off from the bottom. So the S is obviously the SFC. So you want to hit import, find either glossy or matte, open up them and hit enter. Then the M file, which I showed you earlier, which will then you want to import that. That's also included with the SFCs. Now for the C and the D, obviously you can see they're slightly different. One is DXT5, BC3 and BC1. Now for this, it's easier just to import the same file, which would be your main paint file. So if you go to your folder and bring in paint. And then do the exact same for D as well. That has that working perfect. So then we'll hit file and then hit save. And then overwrite the common FOM. Now the benefit this year is before you had to do this 5 times. That was a lot. That was an absolute lot. This time it's only 1, thank God. So once you've saved that, you can exit out of this, and we're now ready to go and test it out in game. So here we are with version 1. As you can see, it is all ready and good to go. Pretty straightforward. Again, this is one of the more easiest ways of doing it. Obviously you are limited in certain regards, where the finish is obviously quite a bit trickier, and trying to manage that and balancing that out with obviously what you want can obviously be a bit tricky to understand eventually, but soon enough you obviously get your head around and get you one. You have a bit more freedom with this version per se, especially for my team. You can then add sponsors yourself as you get them. Obviously they won't appear on the car naturally. You could then add them in, like say where the Fanatec logo is, or even where the main Veloce one is on the side. You can then add that as you go on. But now this one's done, let's crack on and look at version 2. Inside the files you'll be downloading, there'll be a Livery common folder. So let's open that up now. Upon opening it up, make sure you click load transparency as alpha. Now this is the file that we're going to be using for the colorways. So like I said earlier, how this is going to work is we're going to strip the Livery down to 3 different colors. We're going to need to make them single colors per layer. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to merge down all of my logo layers and all of the carbon layers. That way they're all inside of one. So now we have these 3 layers. Next thing to do is create a new layer, and let's give it the pink color. Select all 3 of your layers plus the new color we added, and then drag it into the next one. The reason we do this is just to make sure it's easier to line up and that we're not in the wrong position. So now looking at this, we're going to need to match these 3 colors. So we have red, pink and yellow. So first things first, for the little extra blue color logo, let's give that the pink. For the black carbon, let's give this the yellow. And for the base, let's give this the base red. So here we are, we have these 3 here. So the next thing we're going to want to do, and here's how we're going to save this. So instead of all the other ones, we're going to do it once again very differently. So if you go to the channels, you can see we've got all the different colors and how everything works. So what you're going to want to do is go File, Save As, go to Desktop into your My Car, and save it. Keep the names to make your life a little bit easier. And you want to go Color Alpha, then BC7, but don't click RGB. Just do fine. Then hit OK. And then once that's saved, we're ready to go back to the desktop. Okay, so now we've done that, let's open up ERP Archiver again. And then we're going to go to exactly where we was before, inside of Common FOM. Now, if we scroll down, instead of doing the FOM car, which we did before, we're going to scroll up just a little bit and go to Common 03. Now, obviously, it's blank for now, which is exactly what you want. So the reason we do this is we ignore the S folder and just work on the M folder. It's one single folder. So we're going to go Textures, Import, and then as you called it the same, just open the exact same one, hit Save, replace it, and then when it loads back in, as you can see, it's blank still, which means you're on the right track. So what we're going to do is save that, and then you're ready to go, and let's have a look at it in game. So let's head in and go and sort out our car. If we go to Player Car Liveries once again, and you can see we've got it loaded in. Again, I've already have these pre-selected already. If you don't, obviously you just want to click Create New, and then obviously it'll be pretty straightforward as to which one doesn't work. So let's open this up, we'll edit this, and then we're going to change the color of the car. So now I've got it preset as red, blue, green. So what you need to do is obviously adjust them. So you can see we've already got 2 different colors here, 3 on the front for gate. So we obviously want this to be white. So let's change that to white, change blue all the way to black. And then obviously for gate, it's currently green. And that logo is currently, it's usually about a bluish color. If we wanted to, we can make it completely black just to match the rest of the car. So then obviously, you know, you can go around, you can tweak how you want it to look. And let's say we want glossy for that. For that, how about we go matte black, you know, maybe tweak it a little bit, give a bit of gloss. And then I guess for this as well, if you wanted to be really different, you could obviously have a different kind of gate. But for the most part, if it's pretty straightforward. Like, it's definitely a little bit easier Obviously you can see the slight differences we have between these two, doing matte and non-matte. Now the only issue with this is you'll find that you don't have the camo on. You'll find that you don't have the camo on this version, and now the reason for that is obviously the camo is essentially bolded out into one color, so you do lose that. You can tweak it around and get the camo if you'd like, but it is obviously a bit tricky to get the kind of colors matched and add matte carbon. If you wanted to have a bit more of an intricate design, then this is probably your way to go, just so that way you have that availability afforded to you when you make that decision. Now, at least there's two different ways you can kind of go about it. Again, the drawbacks with this, you can't have any of the sponsors. So for this, for example, when I say sponsors, I mean, you know, on this, for example, you could then add in, you know, a distort there. Even so much as to say on the halo, you could add a bit of shark, give it a little bit extra. And then, of course, on the personal stickers, which the other template is for, you could then obviously add in stuff like that. So it's kind of comes down to your personal preference, what you'd prefer. Do you really mind missing out on those, and then having a card that, you know, necessarily can't have certain features and is really kind of only tied down to 3 colors? That's up to you guys, but I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope it was helpful. If you do have any issues, again, please do let me know in the comments or Twitter. That'll be in the description below. But yeah, thank you very much, guys. Can't wait to see some of your liveries, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye bye.